Jaimi, how are you?
I'm good. It's a beautiful day in Amsterdam, and yeah, it's kind of kind of feels like a birthday. You know, every time you release an album, it kind of feels like another birthday, and it's ready to hit with the new album, and yeah, excited about it, of course.
Well, before we talk about the new album, I like to go back a bit.
Sure.
So, do you remember when you for the first time thought I wanted to be a musician?
Yeah, I think the first moment that I had that kind of light bulb go off in my head was when my father played a record for me. It was a Dire Straits record, Money for Nothing, and that guitar riff came in at the start of the song, and I remember thinking, man, that is just super cool. I don't know, something kind of affected me at that moment, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to play guitar and make music and do what that guy's doing, you know.
What age was this?
I must have been about, not very young, I think 7. And sort of that triggered something in me musically, but it sort of wasn't until my father brought home a guitar when I was 11 years old that I took that next step into actually kind of really getting into it.
And then, what about the Dire Straits? Were you listening to them after that as well? Or?
Yeah, of course. I mean, my father's record collection was quite vast, so I think that definitely played a big part in definitely the kind of music that I was interested in making.
What kind of records would he have in his collection?
Well, it was a very blues, I guess psychedelic rock and folk kind of record collection. So, you know, a cross between Bob Dylan, Van Morrison, but then going into stuff like Dire Straits, Pink Floyd, Jimi Hendrix, a whole lot of guitar players like, you know, Albert King, B.B. King, Freddie King, all the Kings, yeah. And definitely played a big role in that sort of initial spark and getting me involved and interested in playing music.
And then when it came to you yourself playing, was it immediately creating your own stuff as well, or was it mostly just trying to master the guitar?
In the very fundamental stages, I wasn't really aware of what I was doing, so it was very much playing something by ear, literally putting my finger down on a string and hearing the way that sounded, and then trying to pick out a melody on the guitar with no theoretical background whatsoever. And then, of course, I went and studied for a while. First had a teacher in my local area, and then went on to studying at high school, and then further at university later on.
What did you study at university? The music?
Yeah, I studied music. I first actually did a year studying sound engineering, so sound production and things like that. And that was an interesting thing to do, to become aware of the other side of music. But my passion definitely was lying in actually making music and playing an instrument and singing. And so I went and studied performance after that.
So you knew quite, or you were in a way set on having a career in music either way?
Yeah, I don't think I really questioned it. I think it was just something that was very natural. And after high school, the only thing I really considered was doing something in music. So I went straight to sound production, and then realized, well, this is great, but you know, I can see myself playing music more than I can sort of being an engineer or recording music. I've sort of come back to more involvement in sound production recently, just as a result of having your own home studio is very accessible these days, and I do a lot of writing in my own studio and actually a lot of recording for my own albums and things like that.
So by this time when you went to college, were you writing your own material? Were you performing your songs?
Yeah, I was performing at a fairly young age.
Okay.
I think 15 was the first residency I had. I was playing at a local cafe called Kaleidoscope Cafe in Brunswick, Victoria in Australia, run by some really lovely people who were very supportive of what I was doing. And I played there every Friday night, I think it was, for a good 3 or 4 months. And that sort of was the beginning, and from there I started playing in clubs and bars, and as I was getting a little older, and touring also. So leaving Melbourne and touring throughout Australia.
What was it like for a 50-year-old to be in a bar, not in an environment you kind of are too much in, I suppose? So was it intimidating at all the first couple of times you went on stage? Or?
I didn't find it intimidating, and I think that's due to the fact that my high school had a wonderful music program, and we were encouraged to perform, and we would perform regularly.
So, well, you were playing in these bars, you kind of cultivated your craft, and then was there a sense of, okay, now it's time to make it? Now I have to kind of make my living doing this?
Yeah, I guess there was that sense. Yeah, at some point, of course, you have to make a living making music if that's your true calling and something you want to pursue. But again, I never really questioned it. I just kind of went for it.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, a lot of people might think, I need job security. I need to maybe have a second job. And from time to time, I worked in music stores and washed dishes if I needed some extra money. Worked in call centers and crazy things like that. But I just went out and would seek out gig opportunities and would play as often as I could, and somehow just kind of managed to continue building and was able to sustain a career just by making music.
Did it feel as a risk? Well, I suppose then it didn't feel as a risk to you to pursue this.
No, I think when you love something so much and it's a part of your life as much as music is for me, taking that risk just kind of seems like a natural step. There's not really anything you can do about it. It's kind of you propelled forward by music and by making music, and the idea of doing something else doesn't really feel like an option.
Right.
Somehow, yeah.
Because some of these elements kind of come back on the album, where you talk about that it can be financially difficult to kind of pursue your dreams and then to.
Sure.
So.
Well, one thing I should say about that is there are some tracks on this album that deal with financial hardship and the difference between. Basically, I was watching a lot of political programs on TV and becoming sort of more and more dismayed about the divide between the incredibly wealthy, that top sort of 1% of people that seem to own all of this wealth, and the everyday people that really have to struggle to make money. So there's a lot of tracks on this album that explore that theme, but I wasn't writing from a personal experience. So one particular song, Up All Night, which is the title track of the album, deals with that theme. And also It Ain't Easy was inspired after watching a YouTube viral video that with an interview by a guy called Ronald in Chicago, a homeless man. And he was talking about his struggle of living on the streets and being homeless, and the shame that he felt of having to beg for money, and the way that people perceived him, and the way that people treated him with less respect than they might treat someone else. So that really touched me, and that's where that song was born. So in terms of the financial hardship aspect, I've never really felt that.
Okay, so it's not in that way autobiographical? Or?
No, I mean, of course, music is not a steady job. So there are times where you're thinking, oh man, it's getting a little tight here. But I'm quite comfortable. I'm able to live quite comfortably, and get by. But these songs that explore these themes were written from another place. They were trying to put myself in the shoes of these people and to write for them and from their voice.
What made you decide to do this? Why? Well, you kind of touched upon it already. But what how do you go from seeing this on the news to wanting to write about it or wanting to record?
Well, I think part of writing music is about being inspired, but also trying to tell a story.
Right.
And there's only so much I can tell my story before I find it boring. You know, I
Okay.
think, I'm continually inspired by outside sources, and it's, the word singer-songwriter is thrown around a lot, but what I'm trying to do is tell stories and tell stories from other people's, other people's point of view.